Hi everybody, my name is Shalvie Friedman and I work for Aish UK. And I've been thinking for the last couple of weeks as I'm sitting in lockdown, and every time I go onto social media and I see my status update bar empty, and sometimes I add a picture or my fingers reach to my keyboard and start typing something, and my brain starts ticking because I start thinking not about what I need to say, but who I'm friends with on Facebook and who I'm friends with on Instagram, and what they're going to be processing as they see my feed. And it's made me quite distressed, to be totally honest, because some of the things that I see on social media feel like they're perhaps insensitive to people who are really challenged by this time. And so I decided to bring on Aimee Baron to maybe give us some insights into some of these matters as well. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. Shalvie, thank you so much for inviting me on here to speak. I'm a pediatrician by training, and Shalvie, I think the reason why you asked me to come and speak with you and specifically about these points is because I run a nonprofit, which is on a nonprofit social media platform, which is based mostly on Instagram, which is called I Was Supposed to Have a Baby. And this platform is specifically designed to help the Jewish community at large, anyone in the Jewish community who is struggling to have a child, to build their family either from the ground up, they don't have children yet, or those who want to add to their family and who are having difficulty. And so your specific points about wanting to be sensitive to the audience of your posts or your messages on social media are exactly on target, because this is a community. My community is in a tremendous amount of pain. In general, it's in a tremendous amount of pain, but the lockdown and this pandemic has caused even more suffering and even more pain.
Right. Well, I think there's two elements here. I know that a lot of like the fertility, institutions and treatments have been kind of just come to a grinding halt, which I can't even begin to imagine especially a woman who's like been building up to this and taking hormones in preparation for some, and then it just gets halted, which is just absolutely heart-wrenching. But I think that, look, in general, at this time, normally we have like this social space where we kind of just vent or express or just feel normal in, whether it's bumping into a friend at shul or seeing somebody in the supermarket or just, having someone at a Shabbat meal. And suddenly that space is gone, and for everybody. And I think that as a result, the only space we do have is social media. So I bump into people on Facebook because where else am I seeing them?
Right.
Which is why it's so interesting, because people have reached out to people they haven't spoken to for years, because suddenly physical distance isn't a thing, because the only thing we have is this kind of connection.
Yes, this virtual connection. Yes, I'm finding also, and it's not only my community, but it's the singles in the community, it's the elderly in the community, it's those who do not have a bustling primary home environment, the ones who are constantly, as you said, would be invited out or would be part of the general larger community, who would be getting those invitations to different events or going to lectures or who would be coming to those Shabbos meals, and all of that is gone. And so those individuals, and also obviously in my community where these individuals don't have children yet or want to have this bustling home and only have one child at home. So it's this very interesting, I find, juxtaposition where we have some individuals who are really struggling at this time because their lives are so full, right?
Yeah.
Because they're busy all the time trying to manage their personal lives, their home lives, trying to get groceries in. As we know, that's a huge issue at this point in terms of supply and demand and so on and so forth.
Finding an online slot when the
available. Till 3 o'clock in the morning to get that slot, and then once you finally load your cart, and then the delivery comes and only half your items show up. I mean, this is a tremendous amount of stress for everyone, and that's the universal experience, right? So though all of those people are struggling to work and manage their personal lives, and all of a sudden they've become house cleaners, and they've become school teachers, and they've become cooks and chefs and every other sort of role imaginable to their entire immediate family. And that could be 2 kids, 4 kids, 6 kids, etc. And those are the individuals in their household, and they're overwhelmed.
They're totally not coping.
Totally not coping.
Right.
And they themselves don't have the outlet, and it's really, really hard.
Right. But at the same time, I think, one of the images which is going around social media at the moment is that picture of the mum who's sitting and she's like, her hands are in 7 places because she's washing dishes and taking care of 5 children and the dog, right? And then at the bottom, it says everyone who doesn't have kids is saying, oh, isn't this wonderful time to just, be alone? And every time I see it, I like feel the stabbing pain, because I just don't think that that's fair, and that's not an accurate, and that's an incredibly painful thing to say, because I know people who I love, people, friends, family, who would do anything to be that busy mom with the baby. People who are single, people who are childless, my grandparents who are stuck in South Africa, who would do anything, would jump on a plane in a second to spend time with their grandchildren. And I feel like in a way, it undermines the deep suffering of loneliness when people complain about their deep suffering of overwhelmed, too many people in their space.
Absolutely. And in addition to that, there's also been, a lot of memes going around social media. Oh, well, there's going to be a baby boom in 9 months. So, I mean, it's not only I don't have a baby now, but for all of those individuals who don't get their periods regularly, who need the fertility treatments in order to initiate any sort of cycle, who depends on those medicines, doctors, appointments, etc., in order to be able to even have the possibility of getting pregnant. For all of those people to hear that, oh, well, everybody else is just going to have a baby in 9 months, is even another stab in the heart, and it is even more painful. And it's just this, so many different communities are suffering. There are those with the haves, and I hate to use the word haves because it's not really a have. It's more just the ones who are so busy and trying to juggle and manage so many different pieces. They're suffering because they don't have that alone time that they desperately need and desperately crave. And then there's the other side that have too much alone time, and they would desperately love some of the bustle and some of the busyness and don't have it.
Right. So I guess the question is, what do we do? How can we? I feel like so conflicted about this, because on the one hand, the jugglers, let's say, are so desperate to share about their experiences online, seeing as it's the only place where they really are sharing. And at the same time,
it's the only place to go at this point, right?
To escape.
Yes.
And at the same time, I feel like surely there has to be a way to be more sensitive.
Absolutely. Look, this is something that in our community and in my community that we talk about a lot generally. We talk about the fact that it is extremely painful for people to see, for people who are desperately longing to have a child. It's extremely painful for them to see picture after picture after picture of people's families, of people's baby bumps, of people's baby pictures. We know, and we all know those people in our lives, the ones that post, every time the baby coos, and every time the baby smiles, and every time the baby rolls over, and every outfit change. We know those people. And frankly, it's cringeworthy for this population.
And not only that, but for single people too. The wedding photos and the happily married photos are also incredibly painful.
Correct. So for so many of these individuals who are feeling alone, any kind of reminder to them that their lives don't look exactly like they hope them to be, and especially now in a time where dating has sort of become on hold, we're going into virtual dating, right. Whatever that means. I mean, how do you feel chemistry with someone if you're not sitting across the table from them? Very hard. And also, so many other pieces are also on hold. So what I always, when I do when I do awareness lectures, or when I talk to those in the general population about this exact problem, what we talk about is being sensitive. We talk about, what would you feel if you were feeling like this? How would you feel if you saw baby bump after baby bump after baby bump? How would you feel if you were exposed to this baby picture after baby picture? And it's the same if you think about it. Now we're only dealing with virtual space, but so many of these individuals, and again, so my community is the fertility community. And in our community, whenever you go to shul, they're often, if you're living in a community that's filled with lots of families of different ages, outside of shul, there's often a sea of carriages. And in order to even just walk through the entryway, you have to, wade past this sea. And that for some people is just too difficult.
But what are we meant to do? We can't leave our kids at home and never post pictures of our children online for the...
Right. So I think there are really two ways to sort of tackle this. One is for those in the haves. And again, I hate to use that word, but I think for those who are busy, and those who do have children, and those who are happily married at this point, I think to be sensitive to those who have not, who are alone, and to not constantly post, to not constantly complain about the fact that your husband left his socks on the floor for the umpteenth morning in a row, and here you are picking it up, and how, the sink is filled again with the dishes of all the kids' cereal bowls and nobody ever washes up, to really be sensitive. And yes, you're allowed to complain, and yes, you're allowed to express that frustration, but on a constant basis,
or maybe I was thinking maybe find a different avenue. Meaning, if you do need to complain, we all on millions of WhatsApp groups. If you have a WhatsApp group that does have other people who are in the same camp as you, whatever that camp looks like, maybe use that as a space for expressing and sharing and venting, or call a friend, or, speak to a relative, as opposed to putting it somewhere which is just available to everybody, which can be hurtful to people.
Absolutely. There's actually, this is the one that I know about because I'm on it, but I'm sure there are many others. There's a Facebook group called Parenting in Quarantine, or Parenting During Quarantine. And it's filled with story after story after story of parents complaining about, everything that they're experiencing. And I think you're 100% right that that's their safe space, because they can't and won't and feel embarrassed to do that on their regular wall, and they don't want to hurt anyone else.
Right.
So I think that those kinds of groups are perfect.
I think that we live in a society where certain kinds of challenges are socially acceptable to talk about publicly, and certain aren't. So, for example, people speak about struggling with children, that's acceptable. Even people speaking about depression or mental health is something which to a large extent is acceptable on social media. You don't really find people talking about how they really can't have children and they've just had another, levels failed IVF. And, I don't see people on social media saying, I just went on the, my 120th first date and nothing came of it. And people don't post those kinds of things. And I think there's a lot of stigma against these things. And as a result, that which would be appropriate to post in terms of, a mother with children, the same kind of angst, the same kind of, hysteria maybe could be felt by someone going through a different challenge, and yet they would never post that on social media.
Absolutely. Look, it is changing. These conversations are changing. Look, you and I are having this conversation right now. You've been thinking about this. I've built this entire social media platform solely based on exactly this point, that this is a safe space for people to talk about this. There are other social media platforms for those who are single, for those who are widowed, for those who are childless, not by choice. There are other social media platforms that do exist for that support system specifically. But I also think that those that are the haves, the ones that are busy, and the ones that normally would be doing the inviting, the ones that normally would be having these massive Shabbos meals, that would be going up to people at synagogue, at different communal events. I think, our lives are busy. Their lives, I shouldn't say our lives, their lives are busy. and we know that they're stretched to the max. However, it doesn't take a lot of time to spend 10 minutes once a week to call or to video chat one of those individuals who you used to be in regular contact with. It's only once a week. It's a 10-minute, you could even say 5 minutes. And I would even say it's not only about the talk. It's not only about that conversation, because 5 minutes or 10 minutes, as we all know, are very precious in today's day and age. It even can be just the simple text of, hey, I haven't heard from you in a while. I miss seeing you. And I just want to let you know that I'm thinking about you. Right. And just for someone who is getting that message, who is feeling marginalized and isolated, and I can speak personally as someone who went through miscarriages and spent many miscarriages and spent many, many, many months not going to shul and not going to communal events because it was just too difficult. Getting those messages and getting those phone calls were really my lifeline. And we all can still do small tasks. We can do those small gestures to still show our care and concern and love for those who used to be in our lives in a more robust way.
Right. And I would go one step further, which is that I think that people would find, if they reach out to those people, the people who you put them in the haves group, if they reach out to people who would normally be filling their Shabbos tables, etc., I think they would find camaraderie and friendship. Meaning, we're not talking about a charity or a kindness that's this altruistic. We're talking about genuine friendship.
Yes.
And sometimes people turn into their survival mode, and therefore they forget how much they gain from reaching out in love to another human being, as opposed to reaching out in need to another human being. And I think that making that switch and saying, let's find 10 people on your phone list who you love and you want to give to. And I think especially if you're talking to a grown up, I think you might come out feeling enriched and feeling a sense of rejuvenation from such a conversation and from such an interaction.
Absolutely. And look, I can speak personally about this. We are a family that has a full table every single week, usually, before this pandemic. My family always knows that the first question, I don't know if this is going to get cut, but I'm just going to say it anyway. The first question my family asks me on a weekly basis is, who's coming this week for Shabbos? They know that people are coming. They know that they're going to have to give up their bedrooms. We are we are a family that loves to have guests. And for 8 weeks, 9 weeks, 10 weeks, who remembers at this point, but we haven't had a single guest. And as much as our lives are enriched by that, our guests' lives, I just said that backwards. As much as our guests' lives are enriched by coming to our home, our lives are also enriched by having those individuals in our home. And we made it a point. We hadn't spoken to a number of the singles who usually are regulars at our table. And this past Saturday night, for the first time in 8 weeks, we had a Zoom call with one of them. And it was incredible for all of us because we got to really catch up with her in a proper way. And we missed her as much as she missed us. Right. So it was really wonderful.
Right. And I think that that's something which people don't realize, is that actually giving actually gives you, it revitalizes you. It doesn't drain you if it's done in a healthy way and if it's done in the right way, with thought. And yeah, I think we should meet in person. I don't know when we're next going to be allowed to fly across the universe, but
without question, we should meet in person. Yes, but you're in England and I'm in America, so exactly as you said, who knows when that time will be? But I would love to have you come to our Shabbos table the next time you're in New York.
It sounds like an incredible experience. I would love to be able to come. Okay, thank you for your time. And I think that just to sum up, I think we're all feeling vulnerable. And we use social media platforms as a place to be vulnerable. which is what it is. And I don't think we're saying whether it should be or shouldn't be. That's the way the world works currently. And we're lucky to have that as a resource, especially given that we're all in our homes, scared, alone. But at the same time, perhaps what we're suggesting is just to just do a double take before we spread whatever it is that we're making ourselves vulnerable about on social media, and think about who else is vulnerable, who's looking, and what they're perceiving, and what emotions they're taking in from the things that we're posting.
Yes, and I also would add in closing that to the community that's feeling lonely and to the community that's feeling isolated, please know that these families that are struggling, these families that are juggling 1,000 things, they're taking to social media, and they're using that space as a space to complain about their plight and wanting to get support and resonance from other people who are also feeling that way. Please know that this is not meant as a target, and this is not meant to hurt all of you. They love you and they support you, and they're so sad that they're not able to, bring you into their homes and to have that space to really support you in the way that they would like, but that they're using this space to vent. And it's as much as it feels like a personal dagger and you wish you could be in their position, please try to take it with a little bit of a grain of salt and recognize that as much as you're suffering, they're suffering too. And just to try to let it roll off a little bit.
That was beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you everybody for listening. My name is Shalvie Friedman. Please like the link, and please subscribe to Aish UK so you can hear more content as it comes out.
Thank you, Shalvie.
Thank you. Thank you so much.